now. And I'm going to activate the live transcript for those who want to. And I'm admitting everybody.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to Power Skills Career Summit Transformation Edition. My name is Diana Viola. I'm the Communications Associate at Career Advising and Transition Services. I'm here with my colleague, Sita Maharaj. Say hi.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
She is Career Advisor at McGill School of Continuous Studies as well, and she will moderate this session and she will properly introduce our speaker of the day, Darline. But before we get started, I would like to share a message with you. McGill University is on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst indigenous peoples. We respect their territory, and we'll start this session with a land acknowledgement. So please stay muted, keep your microphones closed because we are sharing a video.
Thank you so much for that, Diana. Once again, welcome everyone. For us in Montreal, it's the afternoon, so we wish you a good afternoon. Depending on where you're tuning in from, we wish you a good evening or a very early morning. So we want to thank you primarily for stopping into Power Skills, for being a Power Skiller. And today's session is led by Darline Lalanne. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about her. So Darline is I want to give you a bit about Darline. I'll read you her bio. After many years of directing innovative educational programs and over 10 years experience in nonprofit and youth development, Darline joined New York Cares in 2018 and is the director of education and family programs, and recently started a new role as director of community relations. Her department ensures that we develop deeper and more collaborative relationships with communities and serve to improve our program design and impact. So she has a lot of leadership experience. She has much to talk about today. And before we get started with her presentation, I want to welcome you, Darline. Hello, Madame Lalanne. I'd like to ask you how this concept came to fruition.
Well, what we will learn today is that mindfulness is not a buzzword anymore. So really how it came into fruition for me was the practice of mindfulness. I think for us, 2020, we might not remember it, or we might not want to remember it. But a lot of things have changed. A lot of things have pivoted. And for me as a leader, especially even in my own current new role, when we think about serving, not saving, it's important that we are present within ourselves before we can be present with others. And so that type of practice has allowed me to be a better leader to me, a better leader to my department, and also holding my department and what we do more accountable and more truthful to the concept of what we're trying to achieve.
Right. Thank you for that. Welcome. So I will launch your presentation. Please let me know if you all can see this.
I can see it. Wonderful. I don't think it's in full screen yet. So since, Power Skill folks are helping me out with the presentation, you'll hear me say, go to slide 2. So why are we here? The goal of this workshop is about leading with empathy while leaning into courage. And we'll go deeper into that if we can go to slide 2. So the purpose of this presentation is really to discuss the practices and benefits of mindfulness. As I mentioned, for me, mindfulness has been a great attribute, has allowed me to be a better leader to myself. And in order for us to be a leader of others, we must first be a leader to ourselves. The next slide, please. I don't think the next slide is showing up. Great. So as I mentioned, mindfulness is not just a buzzword anymore. It really belongs in our everyday activities, which involves the workspace. To be an effective leader, as well as an impactful leader, managers do need to understand that when employees return to the office or even hybrid, these employees are not the same. And as leaders, we must adapt and lead with empathy. So I hope in this session, the 3 outcomes I hope that we will learn is how to incorporate mindfulness in our management style, how this pandemic has shifted the meaning of being a leader, and then resiliency and mental health, how to keep the ship moving onward, but more importantly, forward. Next slide, please. So this quote resonated with me when I became a leader in a position. It says, your first and foremost job as a leader is to take charge of your own energy and then help to orchestrate the energy of those around you. This reminds me that it's so important that we always think about serving who we are working with. Next slide. So in order to do that, what's the first thing? We have to be present. I love this quote. It says, presence is the portal to everything we cherish. The reality is, in order for us to be effective leaders, we must be first present within ourselves. We're going to go to the next slide, which will go into the foundational elements for mindfulness training for work. So exploring the first step in mindfulness is pausing to become present. The reality is stress and anxiety define so much of our daily lives. We live in a stressful time with standards and fast pace of our culture, and we can easily lose connection to ourselves and to what matters most. Mindfulness invites you to arrive in the present moment. It teaches you to be comfortable in your own skin, to feel at home with others, and to release stress and anxiety. In order to be present at the moment, we must learn to incorporate an incredible but simple task, and that is pause. Learning to pause in the midst of your life brings you back to what's actually happening. Pause and breath, and instead of reacting, you will actually find a space of more clarity and empathy. This practice will teach and allow you to respond in a more skillful, kind, and balanced way. As I say, breath calm with the inflow and ease with the outflow. If we can go to the next slide. So, how do you incorporate this practice in everyday workspace and activities? I'm not sure if anyone has heard of this word, conscious communication. So conscious communication is our ability to clearly and compassionately communicate with ourselves as well as with others. So with that being said, I'm going to play a little, not a video, but a listening session from someone called Michael Singer.
Hope you're enjoying these sharings that we're doing about the workplace and how to make every moment of your work experience a spiritual experience and part of your sadhana, part of your spiritual practice. I thought we'd take a real fun one, which every one of us do regularly in the workplace, which is, what's so spiritual about writing an email? What's so mindful about writing an email? How do I bring consciousness to play and use it as my spiritual growth in writing an email? The truth of the matter is, writing an email is a very, very important thing to do. You're communicating with other people, so it has the whole aspect of communication, and you're also putting yourself out there. Where I grew up, in the size business that I worked with, we were told every single email you write, imagine on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So that's a whole other aspect of mindfulness, is what you write matters. It's not just some innocent little thing. And when you talk, right, unless somebody's recording, it's said and it's gone. An email is not that. It is a permanent record, and it can be used as such. You have a lot of interesting dynamics in writing an email. One is that, which is you best watch what you say. And the other is, obviously you have something to say. You wouldn't be writing an email So you have to communicate. It's just a wonderful case of mindfulness. So the first thing you do when you sit down to write an email is center. Always center. I don't care if you're just saying yes, sending an email back with a reply. How many times have I hit a reply and I thought I hit reply and hit reply all? Not too many, thank God. You have to be conscious every single step of the way. So you start off with, am I just responding to the person who sent it to me as a reply, or is what I'm going to say something that should be shared with other people? That's what mindfulness is, all right? It is being present and making a conscious decision instead of letting habit and mindlessness cause trouble. So to me, even that act helps you spiritually. I had a teacher once who said the following early in my years. They said, if you took a quarter and put it in your left pocket, and every 15 minutes moved it out of your left pocket to your right pocket, and you did it every single 15 minutes, you become enlightened. Because it would require consciousness on your part at least every 15 minutes. So that act of bringing consciousness to bear is what you're doing when you write an email, all right? So as opposed to moving a quarter from pocket to pocket, I'm telling you the act of forward, reply, reply all is supposed to be a conscious act. Bring yourself to bear, it matters. The next thing you do, once you have the palette before you, once you've hit reply or forward, is you think, what am I trying to say? Not what do I want to say? That is a totally different thing. What you want to say includes your personal stuff. You didn't like how somebody else said it. You want to pick on somebody. They sent you an email 3 days ago that you didn't like, and you're going to get even. I'm not interested in any of that. There should not be any personal garbage in the workplace. Really, there shouldn't be anywhere, but I'm limited to the workplace right now. There shouldn't be any personal motive or personal garbage. The email is not supposed to make you feel better. The email is not supposed to prove that you're smarter. No, I want to hold my nose, but it would mess up the recording, all right? You do not bring your personal garbage into the workplace. It is a sacred place, and you need to be willing to put your personal stuff aside. So first, you open the palette by being conscious as to who you're writing to, and second, you look to see where are you coming from. And if you're coming from 100% personal, I guarantee you that does not belong in an email, period. It really doesn't belong there altogether. But if you really can't hold yourself back, you do it verbally. It does not belong in an email. Half the time, once you write something like that and send it, you're sorry you did. You go back and read it. Oh my God, did I really say that? Because you didn't write the email. Your emotions did. The lower part of your being wrote this thing. So now you bring down to not what I want to say, what do I need to say? What is the purpose of this? And you focus on it. You bring that kernel out. And you try to communicate as clearly as possible. You type it out. To me, if you misspell in an email, I don't like that. That's just showing you don't care, it shows you didn't bother reading it, but it wasn't an important email. Everything's important. Everything's meaningful. You don't just jot the stupid thing out and send it. You take the time to look over it, read it. It's representing you. It's representing what you feel about life. It's your gift to God. To me, every single thing I do is not going to who the email is going to. I'm writing this because this is my part of participating in the universe, and it's worth an extra minute to go and read it. If I have an attachment, I put a PDF or a photo, some attachment, every single time, even if I just put that there, I click on it, open it up to make sure I put the right one on there. This is called being conscious. It doesn't take more time. In the end, it takes way less time. So notice how an email can be an extremely spiritual experience. It can help you with your spiritual growth. It can help you just like meditation does, if you're willing to stop, look, and listen. So you stop, you pay attention each step of the way, and then before you hit send, you ask yourself, is this right? Is this what I want to send out into the universe? And then with a sense of tremendous spiritual devotion, you hit send, you did your job, and you did it well.
Thank you for listening to that session. I thought conscious communication was so important because everything we do now is all through communication. You know, you communicate verbally, you communicate it via Slack, you communicate in so many different ways. So it's important that we always remember that conscious communication is our ability to clearly and compassionately communicate with ourselves as well as with others. Next slide, please. So I read this interesting article from Harvard Business Review called Compassionate Leadership is Necessary, but Not Sufficient. So compassion on its own is not enough. For effective leadership, compassion must be combined with wisdom. But let's define what that means. So compassion is a quality of having positive intentions and real concerns for others. Compassion in leadership creates stronger connections between people. It improves collaboration, raises levels of trust, and enhances loyalty. In addition, studies have shown that compassionate leaders are perceived as stronger and more competent. But by wisdom, what we mean in leadership is competence, a deep understanding of what motivates people and how to manage them to deliver on agreed priorities. Next slide, please. So where does that bring us? It brings us to wise, compassionate leadership, which is the ability to do hard things in a human way. I like the word human way because it makes me think of two words, empathy and courage. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of one another. Courage, strength in the face of pain or grief. If that's anything that we probably all have in common right now, is that. So remember, as leaders, our job is A, create a sense of community and a sense of experience for your team. Focus on leading. It's okay to make the wrong choice because you learn, own it, and move forward. Trust your team. Learn to love a good surprise. I do. You're only as good as your team. And I think we've all heard this, but this is so important. Remember, people choose a boss, not a job. Be open, but more importantly, let the masters lead. You as the leader, you are not perfect. You don't have the best skills in everything. And I can guarantee you someone that reports to you is better at something else. Communicate your value at work, but also appreciate others' value as well. And more importantly, be an authentic leader. Be of service to others. Make your mess your message. That is vulnerability. This resonated with me this year, where it's like sometimes we hold so many things in, and when we don't, we're like, we can't share these things. But vulnerability is such a powerful tool to be able to connect and share your skills as a leader. Next slide, please. Great. So one of the things that I've practiced now moving forward is just like with an email or every morning I write in my journal and I ask myself this question: what is your intention? And what is the energy behind your intention? Again, the first and foremost person we need to hold accountable is us, is our action, before we can be present with others. Next slide. Now that I've shared all these things, I'll give you a little bit of homework. With mindfulness, you can take a moment to pause after you write an email, before you hit send, or pause before a difficult conversation, or take a pause even when you get in your car before you go to work. So right in the midst of your activities and your workday, you can pause for a moment and be present. And I ask you to notice what it feels like to do this. And then the final slide is, first, thank you for taking this time to be present with me, to be present with yourself. If you want to learn more, my email is there and we can connect. I'll open the door to questions. I see photos.
Thank you. So, I definitely want to thank everybody for some really awesome questions and such. Would anybody like to just go straight over to, unmuting and asking any specific questions? And while we're waiting for someone to do that, let me ask you, Darline, what really caused the shift within you and your management/leadership style to have to go into the realm of mindful leadership and mindful self-leadership before organizational leadership?
Yeah. If 2020 taught us is that we didn't want 2020 to happen, it happened. And the reality is, as a nonprofit agency, our job is to be of service. And to be of service, we must be of service to others. And life was still happening, a life was happening to people. And one of the things I realized was the lack of connection that we were having virtually, because none of us prepared for this. But also, as I said, a lot of us were in a pandemic trying to work from home. So it was important for me to be, as a leader, to take a step back. And I realized at one point, the pandemic was impacting me. I kept on hearing sirens. Not only was I hearing sirens, I knew when the sirens were happening, And it's like, whoa. And all I kept on saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do for the community? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? But how can we do for the community if we cannot do for ourselves? And more importantly, my community was my department. So it was important to ensure that the mental health of the team was at the forefront of everything that we do. So that pushed me to really take a moment to think about mindfulness. And then I started reading some books, Michael Singer, which is The Conscious Communication. He's very upfront about his tools, which I appreciate. And, that particular sound that I just shared with you guys about conscious communication is that because we do use Slack, we do use all these different channels of communication, we forget to really just take a moment before we click on send. What is our intention? What is the energy behind that intention? Because guess what? The person that's reading it on the other side is projecting it in a very different way.
And once again, everybody feel free to jump on in. We have a nice few minutes of conversation, which is lovely and gets us an opportunity to really understand this concept and how you employ it. How has this situation, the pandemic, and everything that is happening to society globally, meaning a lot of things have come up during the pandemic, a lot of inequities we're glaring, it's glaring how inequitable things are. It is really happening, and leading in mindfulness sounds so take charge and empathetic. But how do you encourage your counterparts, other department leaders and other folks in your organization and outside to also try to employ a level of mindfulness? What tips can you suggest for us today?
Yeah, having those uncomfortable conversations, And when I say the other part of the tip is when you ask a question, how are you doing? Create space to really listen to how folks are doing. We live in a world where it's like, oh, how are you doing? And the person's like, okay. And then we just keep going to the task. When the reality is, okay, is that a good okay? Is that a bad okay? So really, in any meetings now that I do, whether it's 45 minutes, whether it's 2 hours, if I'm going to ask you how you're doing, we're going to create space not only for you to share, but also for me to share. And as a leader, I've also learned to even be vulnerable and say, you know what? Today I'm not doing too good. That's okay. That's okay. And people meet you halfway there. I think that is so important because also it shifts the meeting. And it shifts the meeting not in a way where nothing's going to get done. Sometimes you just have conversations and get to know each other. And again, like I said, people don't choose jobs, they choose bosses. And when we think about a boss, I always say, I never know where people are going to be in life. It could be the other way around where they could be hiring me or my boss next time. So I always say, what is the weight that I want to leave? And so for me, though I'm your boss, but I'm someone that's a mentor as well. I'm someone that's here to motivate you. I'm someone that's here to identify your skill strengths, to celebrate that so you can see some of the things that are just not even, that you're not even confident about exploring.
Right. I think that's such a nice way of putting it because we never know how society or life or the turns and twists will take. And somebody on your team tomorrow might be your boss. And so how we treat folks should really be a representation of how we choose to be treated or want to be. And I see Karen has her hand up. Karen, if you're okay with asking your question, just unmute and go for it.
Sure. I'm basically shy, but I've gotten older, so I care less.
I love
I love it.
Yeah, actually, I do too. Thank you. It was basically agreeing, and I think what you had said about checking in, and I think that's one thing that COVID has really taught us. And I was a relatively new sort of manager or supervisor of folks, but as you pointed out, that mindfulness with empathy is very important, but just checking in with everybody, because we were, compartmentalized in our homes. And I saw how I reacted to the first few weeks of lockdown, and I surprised myself, because while I'm a people person, I also like to be on my own, but I was completely at loose ends for 3 weeks. So I thought, so the person who's considered to be more of an introvert or the extrovert on my team, they're all going to be responding differently. And it was important for me to really reach out, I felt, to reach out to them to see how they were doing. And then there's also that pride, and there's our sort of what we've learned. And it's easy to say, oh, we're okay. But by that, I would then try to say to them, I didn't want to make it about me, but I thought if I sort of presented to them how I was feeling, hey, I'm really struggling with this, or hey, I can hardly wait for wine o'clock at 3 o'clock this afternoon, that it would help them perhaps a little bit as well, to just say, hey, yeah, I'm struggling a bit too. And then, then we could have the conversation about how can we support each other? What can I do to help? What do you need from me, or what do you need from your colleagues? So yeah, totally agree. And I think COVID has been difficult. The pandemic has been hard, but it also has given us some things that I think we're missing in our lives, and that were very important, and that were lessons that we could take away from this. So thank you. And thank you very much as well for the interesting presentation.
No, thank you, Karen. And one of the things I want to stress to folks, especially as leaders, is that we need to check on each other as well as leaders. We forget to do that, because remember, we have a certain level of energy and we like to give, because that is our job, to lead. But the reality is, I check in with my fellow directors. How are you doing? And sometimes, the other thing I've learned is, by being present, is how you start a meeting. I have a thing for me when I start meetings, I didn't share it today, is music. I get people in the groove, it's like, that's me gaining back my energy, because sometimes I'm just not there, and that's okay, and so some folks, that's how we start. Now it's like, I'm the unofficial DJ at my job. So I definitely say, in a pandemic and it's in a virtual world, how do you bring that human element to it? So find something that's unique about you. Don't just start a meeting with, let's talk about the task that needs to get done. Because you know what? It's still going to be there tomorrow. Right. And go ahead.
Thank you for sharing that. And I see that Amin, I hope I'm saying your name right. Amin's hand is up. I'll go to you in just one moment. But something to tie what Karen and yourself, Darline, are saying is to bring back joy. For some reason in the workplace, we have taken out or removed joy or fun or a sense of levity, and we have replaced it, and this is societal, obviously, we have replaced it with more hours, more tasks, more. And I think maybe, Karen, when you said, we have gained, I would be so forward to say, for my own self, I have gained a sense of joy, a joy in questioning, how do I feel about this organization? How do I feel about what this organization represents globally? How do I feel about my role within the organization as to how it's reflecting into the world? And during the course of my day, what can I do to bring a sense of joy? And sometimes, and Deanna's here as a witness, we all have these silliest conversations, or we can probably be mildly inappropriate, but in a safe space, right? It's in a contained safe space where we let it all hang out. And to find yourself in an environment where you can be working and enjoy your colleagues and feel safe that you can mildly be inappropriate is so rare. But I feel maybe we need to kind of start questioning, even as leaders, how can we bring forward the sense of safety and security and joy with my colleagues, and not be so top down but horizontal, because I, as a human, I'm letting you into my home the same way you are letting me into your home now when we're working. So we're all somewhat, stabilized, and it could shift. So being mindful as to how we present also to this point is very interesting, and one that I'm happy we are exploring. I'm going to ask Amin for your question. Feel free.
Yeah,
welcome.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thank you, Darlene. This was great. So much of what you shared really resonates. And I think being mindful, not only in work, but even in life is where it's at. Practicing the pause and doing those things just gives you that perspective, right? So this was really great. I guess a question I have is, and as I asked this, I kind of know the answer, but I would love your perspective, is that if somebody's perhaps entering a new leadership role, and you know that there might be, again, I'm going to use this word very carefully, some resistance, right? With like, okay, there's like a new leader, and obviously you live true to your values. You go in with that servant leadership mindset, and you say that I'm here to help you guys achieve your goals. That's what I'm here for. And you just live true to those values, right? But what if there is a little bit of resistance along the way, which perhaps there could be or they couldn't be? But I hope I didn't ramble on.
No, the reality, there should be resistance, and we should embrace that as leaders. It actually pushes us to be uncomfortable, to getting to the next level. I say first and foremost, I always say, get to know your staff. It's important before, when I started in different leadership positions, the first thing I've always done is a 90-day plan, and I share it with everyone so that they hold me accountable. So it's like now we've switched it. And I remind people that my job is actually, I'm working for them. They're not working for me, because my job is to tap into that skill. That changes that. The other part that I've also noticed that has been very helpful is proactive feedback. Not waiting for feedback as a leader, but proactively asking for feedback. I use this word low light and highlights. Highlights are like, what really am I good at? Lowlights would be considered as the areas that needs improvement. I use the word lowlights because I think areas of improvement sometimes is just negative because it's, usually part of the review process. But lowlights, I see it as an opportunity to improve. It's still a light. It's a skill set that you're going to have to work on. So I usually proactively ask people, what am I doing good? How can I be a better service to you? And I use that word versus just, any feedback you have for me? Because the reality is sometimes staff don't know how to give feedback. We need to see feedback as a gift. Feedback is actually a skill set, which is something that is important to actually teach folks how to give feedback. I think sometimes people just think feedback is like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. The reality, feedback should be applied very much of the concept of SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timeline. And so feedback is a gift. And in order to model that, you must first have to create the space for them to share feedback with you. So now they feel that they are truly in partnership with you. And then the other thing, because we are in this virtual world, is I love, even when I was in my office, utilizing visual elements. So actually, one of the things that I did that was consistent is I did play music in my office, but I also had quotes. I would change the quotes around, as a way to motivate. Because if anyone at my job knows, they'll say, Darlene, if you come to her office and you have a problem, the one thing she wants is a solution. It's not the perfect solution. I just want us to have a solution, because you're coming with an energy that's focusing on solving something. So yes, so look at it as a blessing for you if there's pushback, because it's going to push you to go deeper within yourself. But understand that trust does take time, and change the dynamic where it's not just about the work, but it's about getting to know the people that will be working with you, not just for you. Because really your job is the other way around. They're not working for you. You end up working for them.
Darlene, I love that perspective. And I saw a lot of folks going like this. Yes. And what I think also is so key to be mindful of is when we have because sometimes when we're working, we remove what we've already learned, right? Mm-hmm. So if you put back in your mind what it felt like to be an elementary school student or a high school or a college student, when you had somebody that was too strict or you didn't feel you could approach, how did you react? Versus that one or two teachers that stood out of, they weren't too stressful, They had specific requirements and boundaries, but they were open and approachable. Did you not want to run to do those assignments because you wanted to make sure that they were supportive and helpful? So when you think of a work environment, I would go so far as to saying leadership styles should be a little bit more managed this way as well. If you have a boss that you are afraid to go and approach, or you're that boss that people are afraid to come and see, then are you getting the best results? And you said something so key that it's a little bit aside from mindfulness, but I really don't think it's that far away, is that feedback should be taught as a gift, or taught as a skill and is a gift. Because too often we think of feedback as somebody is dissing me. We think feedback is somebody, oh, they don't like me. And various imposter syndromes come into play, or how we perceive ourselves into the world comes into play. However, the feedback may not be negative. So how we respond to feedback has to be mindful as well. How we give the feedback has to be mindful as well. If the goal of the feedback is to make the person a better whomever, whatever their skill or topic is. I'm going to inquire if there's any other question or comment. There's a lot of you in the chat. If there's anything else that you'd like to ask Darline, feel free. We have a few more minutes before we have to wind down. If there's anything at all. And as you're thinking about that, I will inquire, do you feel that this approach sometimes is seen as more soft, therefore maybe more gendered roles come in play when you think of mindfulness? Or should this be opened up to be really seen as something we should all be practicing? And how do we change that? How do we switch off that issue of it being gendered, if it is?
Yeah, I think one, yes, you're right. I think a couple of years ago, mindfulness was seen as, oh, you practice yoga, downward dog, things like that. But the reality is that now I think folks are far much more open. Just like we're open to talking about uncomfortable conversations from social justice, etc. So therefore, we know that in order for us to truly be present and here, there has to be a mindfulness activity. And I would not be surprised, if universities, we are seeing this even in the workplace space, that they are incorporating mindfulness in those activities before we start meetings. This pandemic, yes, there's a lot of things we can talk about that did not work, but it also created an opportunity for us to pause and think about how can we be better for ourselves and for others. I think another person has their hand up.
Yeah, so Liliana, feel free. Welcome.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just had a question about giving feedback and performance evaluations. Have you found that you've modified the way you do give feedback, or in context of the pandemic, or have you softened change your expectations of people? Because I find there was a slide about keep moving forward, but I'm maybe let's not be so forcing people to keep moving forward when maybe they don't have the energy to do that. So I'm just wondering how you've changed your approach.
Forward, it's about us. Forward is about the mission of what you're working for. Forward is not about the task. So I think it's important that, feedback, I actually train on feedback. So that's the first thing I do as part of my, any new team member I have, actually provide a training on feedback. So it takes away the emotion. This is not feedback for you. This is not feedback for me. This is just a training on how to receive and how to give feedback, because it is truly a gift. The one thing I would say that I do more now is celebrating the wins, because we do associate feedback as that negative. Oh, you're going to diss me. You're going to say what I need improvement. But the reality is feedback should really be, if someone is working for you, every day there should be something good you have to say. And if you can't identify that, then you as a leader need to take a moment and say, what am I not doing? What am I not seeing? So it's important that we're creating that balance, because you are investing in them and they are also investing in you. So I would say that for any manager, when we talk about feedback, we should provide a training on feedback. The other part is, that proactive conversation takes away the emotion. And when I say that proactive conversation, not you giving them feedback, but you asking for feedback. You know, I think it is so important because it really takes away the emotion, because now it has created a safe space for them to say, oh, okay, you're now asking me to tell you what you need to work on, but you're my boss. Yes, I have a list of things. Because, you know, a lot of the time as leaders, we think we're doing the right thing, but the reality is we're not listening. We're not looking at those little things whereby the person's like, that's really not what I wanted. So I would say, to build that trust, proactively ask for that feedback. And yes, we are still a leader. There's still a job that needs to get done. The job does evolve. Moving onward and forward is moving together as a team.
I just typed in the messages to you, Darlene, and I'm going to share what I said. I said, I so much prefer you like this, without the slides. You're talking and you're so dynamic. And I feel like I'm learning so much more about your own leadership style this way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys want to give me a thumbs up in the chat if I'm onto something, but this is just so really motivating to see and feel. This is a really, you know what it makes me feel like? It makes me feel motivated and inspired, and maybe the word should be encouraged, that there are leaders that are willing to be vulnerable, that are willing to be human, that are willing to see that we are all going through a human exchange and connection. And therefore, there's a grander impact on the workforce and how we are seen in the workforce. Because I think while the pandemic has been tough on us, there is so much to be said about being leveled up right now. Like, we're all here and we all have to still get, you know, dinner cooked, and we still have to get our laundry done, and we're in each other's homes seeing it happening, sometimes live when your kids are running in and out. And so it no longer makes your boss here. It makes your boss somebody who you can see at a grocery store and want to say hi to. And a lot of, we needed to, I think societally, we needed to remove those layers and those filters and those fair barriers to be able to say hi to somebody. And you've said some things that have been really special. You know, you lead with music, you bring joy that way. To me, I'm sure it makes me feel like you would be approachable. You're looking for resources and answers. Something happened in our world that was really tough, and you started to say, let me find a more empathetic way to navigate the situation for my own self and others around me, my direct community. I feel that also shows leadership, right? Taking the ownership to want to make a change for yourself makes you a very effective leader. So I commend you for the bravery of that, and for the ability to admit the vulnerability needed to make those changes. It's a very big thing, and it should be seen as such as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely. We're just at the end of our session. I'm going to add in our chat the ways you guys can hopefully stay connected to cats. We are so excited to be offering you this Power Skills opportunity to get involved and to see so many wonderful speakers. Darlene, you were fantastic. I see Deanna's hand is up. Go for it, Deanna.
Before we forget, we have a poll that Darlene prepared. So I would like to share the poll with all of you. So give me 1 second. Lowering my hand first. Here you go. Okay, everybody enjoyed this session.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so happy.
There's more.
So here you go, 100%. Not everybody voted. We assume that maybe they are on their phones or something. It's hard to participate in polls when you are on another device. So the second one is this one.
Will you apply some of the same skills you learned today? We'll wait another moment or two. Okay.
Here you go. That's the result, 100%. Everybody's on board to apply the new skills learned today. And our third and last question.
Would you like to learn more about the mindfulness practice? It's a single choice. I do love this automatic feedback.
Yes, this is actually a great opportunity to, I don't know if you guys have a session on feedback. This is talk about vulnerability right here. I love it. I love it.
So we want to thank you once again for this. You got through automatic feedback. And as we are ending, I just want to say that also is a great reflection of mindful leadership, right? Because you asked for the feedback live. It's something that you can take with you immediately, but it's also a really great way to show that there's a level of courage and vulnerability. So thank you so much. Thank you all for joining today's session. Please feel free to check out more Power Skills. Like I was mentioning, we have so many wonderful events happening for the rest of the week. I'm sharing that in the chat straight away with everybody. And thank you once again, Darline. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.